You know, sometimes I really love to do stuff like this. It's kind of like summertime vibes, but when I say summertime, I don't mean like the sunshine. I mean summertime like George Gershwin, you know. Summertime, and the living is easy. Fish are jumping, and the cotton is high. Well, your daddy's rich, and your mama's good looking. You know, that kind of flow is so wonderful. You can also do it in a major key, you know. I just challenge myself to try to come up with melodies on the spot. And if I'm hearing the melody, I got to hear harmony to go along with it. And you know, you got people who will break this down for you who are way better teachers than me. But all I can say, man, is Joe Pass, Wes Montgomery, and piano players, you know, but on guitar side, Joe Pass, Wes Montgomery, Russell Malone. That's on the jazz side. Down the countryside, you know, you got Tony Rice, and really there's no one else like him. Just that pattern of hearing a melody and hearing the harmony underneath it. If your ear can't do that yet, man, I don't know what to tell you other than you've got to find the way that gets that ingrained in your head. And I think the way that people used to do it was just listening to records and trying to learn it by ear and having to find it, and that painful process of having to find it, that was how people got so good in the 70s and before that, you know. But primarily like the 70s and the 80s, you know, those players that were at the peak of their technique on all their instruments, they would have to sit and painstakingly listen. They couldn't watch video tutorials. They couldn't find tablatures. They had to just listen and figure it out. So you've probably heard a million people say that, but I'm just saying it again because I constantly bump into these situations where people are like, how are you hearing these chord progressions in your head? And I'm like, I'm nothing special. I hear them because I've listened to them so much and then sat and tried to figure them out, and you just painfully have to find it. So that's probably severely unhelpful for someone who is very like paper academic. They want to see it. But if you're willing to play that kind of music, if you want to play soulful, spontaneous music, you've got to get out of that mindset to begin with and get into the heads of those kinds of players that you're listening to and realize that they may have been studious in certain ways, some more or less than others, but they all had in common that they were coming up during the record era when listening to records was the way you learned spontaneous improvisational music, whether it's funk or soul or blues or jazz or bluegrass or whatever. So I just am having these thoughts this morning, and just want to share it. Hope you have a good rest of your day. Before I cut off too, I want to say, like, those kinds of flows I was describing, like, that also comes from learning those kinds of songs, like Summertime and the Great American Songbook. Something about that particular time in history, those set of decades where those songs were being written, people were exploring. They had all this classical influence in the back of their head, and then there was jazz and swing going on at the time, and it all combined together to where they were exploring all the creative ways you could get around in a song, not with riffs, but purely through harmony and the way that the melody interacts with the harmony. And that's a different way of thinking about music as opposed to like the rock and roll way, which is, this is Day Tripper. It's a riff, and there's nothing wrong with riff-based music, but riff-based music does not teach you all the things that the Great American Songbook and that way of getting around music can teach you. And just like that kind of music doesn't teach you about how to write a great riff. That's what Led Zeppelin is for, But in any case, these are the kind of things that I think about when I'm trying to just simplify spontaneous improvisation. And I know it's harder on guitar, probably, than any other instrument, debatably. But I think it's worth pursuing because it's physically, mentally, and emotionally satisfying to execute music on this instrument. And I hope more people get to experience that whenever they're inspired. The more that people can see it, I hope it makes them want to do it. The catch there is that the more we see it, sometimes the less we really close our eyes and listen. And that's the difference between the way we're learning now and the way we used to learn. So if we can close the gap between those, utilize the advantages of being able to see people play with the internet and get all inspired from that, but also get back to what it really meant to learn things by ear and the painstaking process of developing your ear, then I think more people can experience the joy of getting at a high improvisational level on their instrument where they can hear a melody and then you get a harmony with it. I just came up with that right then. I heard a melody, and I heard harmony underneath it. And you don't have to have perfect pitch to be able to do that. Your hands develop muscle memory of reaching for harmonies that you're hearing from intervals. Barry Green is one of my favorite guitarists from North Florida. And he doesn't have perfect pitch, but he can hear the melodies and harmonies and reach for them. And because he sings the melody, and then he hears that harmony underneath. And I know that is so hard for people to imagine. It's so weird. Like, I try to explain to people all the time. They don't understand that I'm literally hearing the harmony underneath the melody before I reach for it, before I reach to grab it. And I don't understand why there's this huge gap between like jazz musicians or people that have studied some jazz and learned that stuff, and then other people who are not hearing the harmony. I don't know why there's this huge gap. I don't think you should have to play jazz or play jazzy bluegrass or play to be able to hear harmony in your head before you play it on the instrument. But I don't know, living in America at least, that's been the only defining trait that has separated those people from me. Like, people who can hear the harmony before they go to play it, especially advanced harmonies, They have played some jazz. And to the point where it's like, anytime anyone hears advanced harmony, period, they'll be like, oh, it sounds like jazz, which is so silly to me, because if you listen to classical music, you'll hear a lot of that. But it is true that jazz music of all different kinds tends to use more harmony at once, but it's just something that's missing for people. If you watch Eric Johnson, he's primarily a blues rock musician, but he hears all that harmony, that jazz harmony in his head. So he'll be like, reaching for something, he'll be like, then he'll be like, and then I've heard him play stuff like that on a Stratocaster, and that's not just written memory, man. That is he's hearing the melody, and then he is hearing that harmony underneath it. He's literally hearing the chords underneath it. And I'm just not convinced that you have to be insanely gifted to be able to do that. I am convinced that you have to listen to an insane amount of music, insanely actively, and then painfully go through the process of trying to play it on your instrument. And then your brain starts to separate the melody and the harmony and hearing them both at the same time in this special place. Just like the same way that a piano player somehow can independently play left hand and right hand parts that are completely different. The brain finds a way to separate it. Like, that sounds impossible to someone, right? Like, to be able to do what a piano player can do, it's like independently, that's like crazy. It's the same thing with hearing melody and harmony separately, to be able to literally hear chords in your head, even advanced jazzy chords. It's doable, it's possible. And I want to see more people get